Sam tylko biorę dużego kebaba, ja miałem średni kebab, to wiesz.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2019 of Warsaw, Poland. Our next speaker is a returning speaker to the 21 Convention stage, first taking it in 2018 and recently the Patriarch Edition in Orlando, Florida. He likes his coffee black, and he's a retired heavyweight boxer and a fucking badass. Without further ado, please let me welcome back to the 21 Convention stage, Ed Latimore!
All right, man. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start this one out a little light because it's a bit of a heavy topic we're going to talk about here. And starting out light, I chose that image off of something, I think I just Googled red pill, right? And I got the image, and I just noticed when I was pulling up the image and getting it ready that the pill inside of the stuff inside of the pill are shaped like hearts. And that just tickled me for some reason. I didn't notice it before. So what I want to talk about today, though, is this whole idea of red pill knowledge saving lives and keeping guys alive. And the original idea came from this saying we used to have back home. And I guess to say used to have is incorrect. We still say it. And that's game saves lives. And the whole idea was that when you look at guys who are doing all types of crazy shit, like running people with vans or shooting up places, we go, man, if they were only getting laid, if they only had a better understanding of the world and women, they wouldn't really be interested in doing that. They'd be too busy getting laid. But instead they're not, and they're angry and they go do stuff. Well, I had that idea. And I said, that's a really good topic to speak about at the convention. And then it got really heavy for me because I started doing research to confirm or deny some of my ideas, and I'll go through that a little more, some things that I actually pulled out. But a lot I kept in, and a lot I found not only reinforced what I thought, but took me down an even deeper rabbit hole. So let's get into it. First, there are some tragedies that I discovered. Number one, divorced men are 2.4 times more likely to commit suicide than married or single men. In other words, I don't think being in a relationship, hopefully being in your relationship is happy, but I don't think being in a relationship is any more or less protective from suicidal thoughts, but certainly getting your heart broken makes it way more likely that you want to end your life and leave this planet. And I put the slash for single. In the original stat I looked up, it had married, but I just figured if you're with somebody for 4 or 5 years and you break up with them, your heart's not going to know the difference. I mean, yeah, there's going to be the legal ramifications and everything for separating the marriage, but in a relationship, that's still a sting and that's still heavy. But that's not the worst part. The worst thing is what I discovered next. Divorced men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide than divorced women. And those of us in the know, maybe even if we're in the know, we're not quite sure why that is, but I'm going to break that down, though. But what that tells me is that even though the event apparently affects both sexes equally, clearly something is going on that makes it more difficult for men to cope with being broken up with than women. That's just the first order. Things go badly, you feel badly. But what about the second order? What about what comes after that? Well, 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. How the father becomes absent from the home, I would imagine that the smaller percentage, and not even imagine, the smaller percentage of of fatherless children, the father died, right? But many times it's because he left or divorced or those kind of situations, one or the other. But mostly he left, and why the father left is going to tie into what we're going to talk about. And the last thing, 70% of inmates did not grow up with both parents in the home. And I did dig deeper into this, and they found, and I'm reporting, that having just a father in the home is no worse than having a mother and a father in the home. Having just a mother in the home is where we see this. They put this stat and they phrase it this way so you're not hip to what's really going on. But the issue is a lot of inmates grow up without a masculine influence in their life. And why is that? Well, what you do or don't do resonates down beyond you. Your failure or your inability to grasp the nature of women and the nature of the red pill is going to lead you to do things like have children that you're not going to be able to stick around with, not because you don't want to be there, but because the state's going to prevent you if it fails. And it fails because you're not prepared for how to deal with these things. But we get into all this a little more. But there are some more tragedies. These are the big ones we hear about. Guys like Elliot Rodger. If you don't know Elliot Rodger, he's the guy over in Santa Cruz, California, who decided that he couldn't stand all the Chads and Stacys getting laid while he was living his miserable life. So he went and killed 6, injured 12, and killed himself. I have no choice but to exact revenge on a society that denied me sex and love. Scott Barrow, down in Virginia, I believe, walks into a yoga studio, kills 2, injures 3, and commits suicide. Here's a guy with a history of sexual misconducts and arrests, issues with relating to women and figuring out why don't they like me, right? No one is saying they should like him, but he can't even understand why and refuses to. Chris Harper Mercer, the Oregon Community College shooter, 9 killed, 8 injured, commits suicide. What's he say? Here I am, 26, no friends, no job, no girlfriend. These are quotes taken from the manifestos or the writings they leave behind on social media right before they go out and do the deed. I didn't even know about this guy. This is the biggest one, or one of the bigger ones. Mark Lepine in Montreal, 14 killed, suicide. What's he say? You're all a bunch of feminists. I hate feminists. Now, we rag on feminists a lot, but no one ever calls for the murder of feminists. And it's not like he was able to, and this was in 1989, by the way. It's not like he was able to go out and had these super glasses on and said, you're a feminist and you're not. No, he just targeted women he suspected were against he and his ideologies or his existence as a man more. George Sardini was really interesting to me when I looked into this guy, because here's a guy, when you look at George, and I didn't put his picture up, George is a good-looking guy. I believe he was a high incomer. He definitely had a high income. I want to say doctor, but that doesn't seem right in my memory. But George Sardini, also where I'm from, Pittsburgh, that's where this happened. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the United States. Walks into an LA Fitness. At random, then not even where the girl is that he was interested in or felt rejected by, who he had just went out on a date with, I believe the week before, kills 3 and commits suicide. Taken directly from his writings, women just don't like me. There are 30 million desirable women in the U.S. My estimate, he actually wrote that. I cannot find one. But the worst, Alec Manassian, 10 dead, 16 injured. He drives a van up in the road in Canada. The incel rebellion has again, we will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys, all hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger. The guy I referenced in the first slide. Nicholas Cruz, 17 dead, 17 injured. This is the Parkland shooter. Obsession with the girl who rebuffed him intensified up into the final days where advances pushed back during the day of shooting. So I did a lot of research into the shooting and discovered that the timeline of the shooting, there was a girl that was his interest and he was chasing until the day of. He actually texted her and she was like, "Get out of here, you're weird." And granted, he was a weird guy. No one's saying that the only reason these guys do these things is because of the failures of women, but they all have that in common. And there's in all of these, and I actually took out a guy, you guys, as Europeans, probably familiar with him. This slide originally had 3 names on her: Alex Manassian, Nicholas Cruz, and Anders Luvitz, the guy who flew a plane into a mountainside because, and they blamed it. When I first did the research, they were saying, okay, he just went through a breakup. He bought his girl an Audi, and she divorced, or not even divorced, I think they were engaged. She dropped him. And I did a little more research and found out the guy was just sick. I mean, it just so happens that event happened, so I didn't think that would be fair to include. But I want to highlight that to show you that I'm not just choosing these guys at random who happen to have a difficulty in romance or a difficulty accepting the nature of women and adapting to it. I'm choosing these guys because that seems to be a significant motivator. And more importantly, and I couldn't find much on the other guys, but more importantly, Nicholas Cruz was the subject of an article that came out a little while ago where they talked about 26 of the 27 deadliest shootings in the United States have been by guys who didn't have fathers in the home. Now that's since been edited, that research shows it was more like 19 or 20, not 26 of 27, but that's still significant. We're still seeing that an inability for men to form connections with women, what did I say at the beginning? Not just the first order, what these guys do, but the second order, what their offspring do, is an effect. Now, what's the problem here? Fewer role models for masculinity in the media. Guys don't turn on the television and see an idea of a stronger man or a man that's capable. I think the biggest show, or one of the biggest shows right now in the United States and perhaps over here, is Modern Family, where our portrayal of what a man is in that show, a man who leads his family no less, is not something that I personally would consider to be a strong male role model. And I know if I think that, and I'm from a single mother home, then I know that many guys must feel the same way. Perhaps they don't articulate it as such, but they know that what they're looking at is not something that strongly reflects what they will naturally want to become. Fewer male role models for masculinity in the home, because so many of these kids are growing up without the father in the home. Now, why the father is not in the home is the state is one aspect of it, absolutely, but the other aspect of it are guys making terrible choices with women, coming from single mother homes themselves, so they never figure out how to bond and have relationships themselves, and as a result, the relationships they do have, they get together, they procreate, and then they depart, and these kids are left without anything in the house to show. Or, and this, I don't know if I would say this is worse, but it certainly approaches the same issue, is the guy who is in the home has been completely emasculated. He has no control, he has no agency. His kids don't respect him. Kind of like a meme we see at a soy boy, except a soy boy with kids. And that can't be good for society, and we can see that. Femme-centric society. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend brought up this article to me about how more children today are being diagnosed with ADHD than ever in history. And my very first thought, this is how you know you've been too woke, right? You've been in this shit for too long. My first thought was, does it break the stat down by boys and girls? It didn't. So I went and did my own research, and I found out, you'll see on the next slide what I found out in terms of the ADHD diagnosis. But we're treating young boys as defective girls, as they say. Boys are between 4 or 5 times more likely, or 4 or 5 times more represented in the ADHD diagnosis than young women than girls. So guys, clearly, either there's something completely wrong with all the boys and we're all defective, right? Or there's something wrong with how we're going about approaching would-be men as they grow and develop. Our worst are focused on and vilified, and our best are ignored and marginalized. Back in the United States, they made a really big deal. First of all, everyone is familiar with the Me Too movement, and how that got started was everyone coming forward against Harvey Weinstein and his treatment of actresses, and forget the ones that got the role for doing that. We're just focused on the ones that felt vilified all of a sudden. And they took him down, and that was good. And then that led to them going after Kevin Spacey, who turns out he was like the gay equivalent of Harvey Weinstein, and guys were being harassed. It's a crazy thing, right? In response to that, though, they look in other fields and see where this is happening or why it's not happening. And we discover that Mike Pence, he's got this rule. And his rule is that he will not have any type of dinner, meeting whatsoever with a woman by herself. There's got to be someone else there, always. It ain't just going to be a one-on-one. And he says he does that to protect his marriage and to protect his rep. He's involved. They are vice president, right? And you would think that would be greeted with applause, but it was not. He was criticized for that. It was like, how are women supposed to make advances, Well, our job as men is to create these safe environments, and we attempt to do that, right? Because what has Mike Pence done? All he's done is look at human nature and go, okay, I can't change people, and I might do some off-the-wall shit. So let me just put myself in a position to where I can't do any off-the-wall shit. And not only did they kill him for that in the media, a recent survey just came out that said 60% of male managers are now afraid to have any type of one-on-one meeting with their female subordinates. And the first thought, of course, is what would you expect? This is a fucking witch hunt, man. Guys ain't trying to get strung up, right? But what was more entertaining to me is that rather than look at these guys as a model of what to do, right, is a way to kind of deal with the problem, they go, well, that's awful. How are women ever supposed to get any type of promotion or any kind of raise? You're not going to meet with them. So we take these guys who are supposed to be making strides and really responding to things the best they can, and we ignore them and we marginalize them, and we, or even worse, we criticize and go after them. And the worst are what we focus on, and when the worst people in the group, they're the ones that are magnified. Their message is the one we hear the most. They get the most attention. That's unfortunate. That's human nature, right? Here's some examples. Mothers receive primary custody 68 to 88% of the time. Fathers receive primary custody 8 to 14% of the time, and equivalent residential custody is awarded in only 2 to 6% of cases. This blew my mind. I wasn't aware of this. Like I said, this putting together this presentation was very enlightening for me because I just followed the facts, and if I saw something, I went and followed more facts. So what we see here is obviously and very clearly the state is favoring putting boys in a situation, or all children, not just boys, because there's effects on the daughters too, and we'll get into that, in a situation where they're going to be raised with a mother as the primary figure they see, where we're removing those masculine role models. Males are generally more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than females, with male to female ratio of approximately 4-to-1 in community samples. I remember my original research, it was a little closer to 5-to-1, but then they played with some wording and got it down to 4-to-1. But the point is overwhelmingly clear that they're looking at young boys as something wrong, not something right. Otherwise, we would expect to see it like more closer to 1-to-1. And lastly, putting together PowerPoint presentations is fun. You know why? Because you got to find pictures that fit, right? The picture I wanted to use for that, she didn't look so happy. It was that picture from the Houston floods, and that soldier is carrying the girl. He's not even a soldier. He looks like an ex-soldier. He's just that jacked and masculine, carrying that woman and her baby. I wanted to use that, and it was flooding, but it didn't fit, right? And I found a few aspects, and it didn't work. But this one is here, and it makes the point that I'm trying to make, which is toxic masculinity has no female counterpart and is grouped with masculinity in general. If you doubt this, go ahead and mention something about masculinity on social media and see how you are vilified and how it quickly turns into toxic masculinity. That adjective is just going to sneak up. There's not only are you not allowed to separate the two, but try and bring up a conversation about toxic femininity and see what happens. You will find that shit apparently is like Santa Claus and the leprechaun had a baby, and he was the twin of the Easter Bunny. Like, it doesn't exist. But toxic masculinity is real and alive. So we got these examples. What's the solution? I don't want to just bring you down. The solution is for you to understand